Good evening to you, Dianne.
Good evening, Gbenga, and good evening to the viewers.
Now, Dianne, the issue of the workers' salaries was a big issue outside the conference. How did it come up inside the venue? And did it come up? What was it spoken about?
It was spoken about briefly, Gbenga, when the COSATU leader, Zingiswa Losi, took to the podium, as well as when the SACP leader, Solly Mapaile, took to the podium. The SACP and COSATU are alliance partners with the ANC. So that means that they do have sort of a membership arrangement with the ANC. They attend their conferences, even though they are independent organizations. And both of those organizations were in support of the workers picketing outside. And in fact, when they took to the podium, they said that they were surprised that the ANC leaders seemed to be going on with the conference without much consideration for those who were picketing outside the conference. However, when the president spoke, he didn't make any mention of the workers who were outside, which is likely to be something that the workers who are protesting will not be particularly happy about, because the purpose of their protest was really to try and get attention onto the issues and the concerns that they were raising.
Now, the ANC president, Cyril Ramaphosa, who is also president of the union, did speak at length at the conference. What were some of the highlights of his speech?
Yes, absolutely. It was quite a lengthy speech, sort of setting the path or laying a roadmap for the delegates taking part in this policy conference. The purpose of the policy conference is really for the ANC to discuss some of the internal matters that they feel are necessary. And you saw in that clip that he was talking about how the ANC really needs to work on its image in a way to get South Africans to begin to believe them once again. He also spoke quite a lot about how the ANC has been linked to corruption, and how there have been a lot of protests at municipal level, and that those protests are protests against the ANC, and that is something that the party has to deal with. Of course, another big issue was the ongoing energy crisis in South Africa. We know that there was recently an announcement about a comprehensive energy plan, but the president touched on that issue, saying that it was important for delegates to look for a longer-term solution to the energy crisis. Now, these policy discussions, Gbenga, are not topics that will sort of just die on the floor of the policy conference venue. They are essentially the blueprint for what the ANC will go into the 2024 election with. There will be an ANC conference at the end of this year where leadership is elected. And then subsequent to that, we'll start seeing those finalized policy decisions, starting to make their way into sort of the formal political area of government, if there are major changes proposed that the party as a whole and the new leadership as a whole chooses to take on.
Now, Dianne, before I let you go, you said that this policy conference is very important and it shapes policy that might come. You also mentioned that President Cyril Ramaphosa talked about the image of the ANC and how it's been associated with corruption. But this is a president who has corruption questions hanging around him, which leads me to this question. Is this policy conference just a talk shop, or will it have any significant impact on government policy going forward?
There is a possibility that it could have impact on government policy, considering that the ANC still has a majority in the National Assembly, and it is the leader in 8 of the 9 provinces around the country. We have seen policy decisions before that have been decided by the ruling party make their way into, national legislation. One prominent example here in South Africa is that before we had the current sort of elite crime-fighting unit of the Hawks, there was previously a unit called the Scorpions. And a decision by the ANC was that the Scorpions was basically wielding too much power, and that a new unit should be designed. And as a result of that ANC decision, it was then taken into Parliament and legislation was put in place that essentially did away with the scorpions and replaced them with the hawks. Obviously, this has at a later stage turned out to not necessarily be a good thing because the scorpions were doing a very good job, and that change took place at the time of state capture. So it's quite important for South Africans to keep a close eye on the proposals being made at the ANC policy conference, because they have that power at the moment to be able to make those decisions national legislation. And you know, there's always the need to question whether they are necessarily in the interest of the broader South African public.
Thank you very much, Dianne Hawker. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for your insight.
Thank you so much, Gbenga.